Get out of the car, Sarah! My husband Jason said these words with a casual cruelty that froze my blood colder than the November rain battering the windshield of his BMW X5. We were stopped in the breakdown lane of the Claiborne-Pell Bridge in Newport, Rhode Island. Outside, the ocean churned violently below. Inside the heated leather interior, my sister-in-law Keisha was inspecting her manicure in the rearview mirror. "I cannot breathe back here, Jason," she whined, kicking the back of my seat. "Sarah's stupid oversized bag is crushing my shopping bags. I need legroom. My circulation is cutting off." I turned around, trying to keep my voice steady. "Keisha, that bag contains my work laptop and the encrypted hard drives for my clients. I cannot just put it in the trunk with your wet raincoats. Moisture will destroy the hardware." Jason sighed loudly, hitting the steering wheel. He looked at me with eyes that used to hold love, but now only held annoyance. He was stressed about the Sterling Summit tonight. He needed everything to be perfect for his pitch, and Keisha, his brother's wife, was the golden girl of the family who could do no wrong. If Keisha was unhappy, Jason was unhappy. "You heard her, Sarah," he said, unlocking the doors. "You are ruining the vibe. We have the gala dinner in 2 hours, and I need Keisha in a good mood so she can charm the investors' wives. You're just going to sit there and sulk because I would not let you buy that coffee earlier." "I am not sulking," I said, gripping my bag strap, "and I am not getting out on a bridge in a storm." "Are you insane?" Jason laughed a dry, humorless sound. "I am not asking. Get out. Take an Uber. Walk. I do not care. Just stop suffocating us with your negative energy." Before I could protest, he leaned across and shoved the passenger door open. The wind ripped it from his hand. Rain lashed into the expensive interior, soaking the leather. "My bag or you!" Keisha screamed, shrinking away from the rain. "Throw the bag out or get out!" I looked at Jason, waiting for him to tell her to stop being ridiculous. Instead, he unbuckled my seatbelt. "You are wasting time, Sarah. Out. Now." He pushed me, hard. I stumbled out onto the wet asphalt, clutching my bag to my chest to shield it from the downpour. Before I could even regain my balance, Jason slammed the door shut. I watched through the rain-slicked window as he turned up the radio. Keisha was laughing, pointing at my soaked hair. The BMW peeled away, splashing a wave of dirty puddle water onto my legs. I stood alone on the bridge, suspended over the dark water. The wind howled, tearing through my thin blazer. I fumbled for my phone with trembling fingers. 2% battery, no signal. I am Sarah, 29 years old, and this was the moment my marriage ended. Not with a fight or an affair, but with the taillights of my husband's car disappearing into the fog, leaving me stranded because I took up too much space. I started walking. My heels clicked against the wet pavement, a pathetic rhythm against the roaring wind. I was a forensic accountant. My entire career was built on finding patterns, finding the truth hidden in numbers. How had I missed the data points in my own life? The subtle put-downs, the financial gaslighting, the way Jason and his family slowly eroded my boundaries until I was nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded on a bridge. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather settled in my bones. I had access to accounts Jason did not know about. I had copies of ledgers he thought were deleted. I had been saving them, protecting him, fixing his messy, reckless spending to keep his startup afloat. But as the rain soaked through my clothes, washing away the last of my loyalty, I realized I was done fixing things. Headlights cut through the gloom behind me. I moved closer to the railing, expecting the car to speed past. Instead, a massive black Range Rover slowed to a crawl beside me. The window rolled down with a smooth electric hum. A woman sat in the back seat. She looked to be in her 60s with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She was dry, warm, and radiating power. "Get in," she said. Her voice was not kind. It was commanding. I hesitated. "I am fine," I said, my teeth chattering. "Do not lie to me," the woman said. "You are soaking wet, you are freezing, and you have the look of a woman who just realized her life is a lie. Plus, you look exactly like my ungrateful daughter." She opened the door from the inside. "I have a proposition. I need a body double for the Sterling Summit. My daughter decided to run off to Ibiza with a DJ instead of attending the board meeting. I need someone to sit next to me, look pretty, and keep the vultures away for 48 hours. In return, I will get you a hot shower, dry clothes, and a ride to wherever you want to go to ruin whoever left you on this bridge. The mention of the Sterling Summit made me pause. That was where Jason was going. That was the pitch meeting he had been obsessing over for months. I climbed in. The interior smelled of expensive leather and peppermint tea. As the warmth enveloped me, I saw a stack of documents on the seat between us. My eyes automatically went to the top page. It was a preliminary balance sheet for a mid-sized tech firm. I saw the error in 3 seconds. Your EBITDA is inflated, I said, pointing at the column with a shaking finger. The woman raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. Line 14. I said, my voice growing stronger as my forensic brain took over. You have listed the venture capital injection as revenue. That is not revenue. It is liability or equity depending on the term sheet. If you present this to the board, they will think you are trying to cook the books or that you are incompetent. And whoever prepared this is hiding a cash flow bleed in the operational expenses. See here, the ratio does not match the head count. The woman picked up the paper, staring at it. Then she looked at me. Her expression shifted from indifference to sharp calculation. I thought you were just a stray kitten, she said slowly. Who are you? My name is Sarah, I said, wiping rain from my eyes. I am a certified forensic accountant, and I charge $500 an hour for consultations. But for a ride off this bridge, I will fix that balance sheet for free. The woman smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a shark recognizing another shark. I am Evelyn Sterling, she said, extending a hand. And I think we are going to get along very well, Sarah. The ride to the Sterling estate was silent but heavy with unspoken potential. Evelyn watched me as I typed on my laptop, which I had miraculously kept dry. I was not just fixing her spreadsheet. I was proving my worth. By the time we pulled into the driveway of a sprawling oceanfront mansion that looked more like a fortress than a home, I had reorganized her entire presentation. Jason thinks I am a nobody. His mother calls me the help. They think I am just the quiet wife who pays the bills and keeps her mouth shut. They have no idea that for the past 5 years, I have been the one secretly keeping Jason out of jail for tax evasion. We entered the mansion. The foyer was larger than the apartment I shared with Jason. Marble floors reflected the crystal chandelier. Staff appeared from nowhere, taking my wet coat, taking my bag. Evelyn turned to me. You are not going to be my daughter tonight. That would be a waste of talent. You are going to be my new senior financial advisor. She gestured to a rack of clothes that a personal shopper had just rolled in. Get changed, she ordered. Burn those wet clothes. They smell like a victim. Put on something that says you own the building. I walked to the rack. My fingers brushed against silk wool and cashmere. I pulled out a white Armani power suit, sharp, tailored, pristine. As I dressed in the luxurious bathroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The sad, wet girl from the bridge was gone. In her place was a woman with cold eyes and a plan. I walked back out into the suite. Evelyn was on the phone, her voice low and dangerous. She hung up as I entered. You clean up well, she said, nodding approvingly. Now here is the situation. I have a lineup of desperate startup CEOs pitching to me tonight for Series B funding. They are all liars, but one is particularly annoying. He has been emailing my assistant 5 times a day. He claims his company is the next unicorn. She handed me a tablet with the guest list. I looked at the name at the top of the list. Jason Miller, CEO of Miller Stream, my husband. My breath hitched. He is pitching to you, I whispered. Evelyn poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed me one. I know, she said. I did a background check on you the moment you fixed line 14. I know who he is. I know he is the one who left you on the bridge. And I know his financials are a disaster because you are the one who usually fixes them, and you were not there to do it this week. She took a sip of champagne, her eyes locking with mine. He is expecting to see Evelyn Sterling, an old widow he can charm with his fake smile and buzzwords. He is not expecting to see his wife sitting at the right hand of the throne holding the pen that signs the checks. I looked at the tablet. I looked at the name of the man who told me I was suffocating him, the man who valued his sister-in-law's comfort over my safety. I do not want to just deny his funding, I said, my voice steady. I want to audit him. I want to expose every penny he has stolen from the company accounts to fund his family's lifestyle. I want to do it publicly. Evelyn clinked her glass against mine. Then let's go downstairs, Sarah. The meeting starts in 20 minutes, and I believe you have a lesson to teach. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. I followed Evelyn down the grand staircase. The heels she had given me were higher than I usually wore, but I felt steady, strong. For the first time in years, I was not walking on eggshells. I was walking into war. We reached the double doors of the ballroom. I could hear the murmur of voices inside. I could hear Jason's laugh, that loud fake laugh he used when he was trying to impress rich people. Evelyn paused her hand on the door handle. "Are you ready?" she asked. I adjusted the lapel of my white suit. I thought about the rain. I thought about the bridge. I thought about the years of silence. "Open the door," I said. The door swung open. The room fell silent as Evelyn Sterling entered. But as I stepped into the light beside her, I saw Jason's face in the crowd. He was mid-sentence holding a glass of wine. His eyes went wide. His mouth fell open. Beside him, Keisha dropped her fork. I looked straight at him. I did not smile. I did not wave. I just stood there next to the billionaire holding the tablet that contained his fate. The storm outside was nothing compared to what was about to happen in this room. The crystal ballroom of the Hotel Viking was buzzing with the kind of electric energy that only money can generate. This was the pre-conference mixer for the Sterling Summit, and the air smelled of expensive cologne, truffle oil, and desperation. Every startup CEO in the room was hunting for a check, but none were peacocking quite like my husband Jason. I was not in the room yet, but I could imagine the scene perfectly. Jason would be standing near the center of the bar holding a glass of Pinot Noir by the bowl, not the stem, because despite his pretensions, he still lacked true refinement. My mother-in-law Linda would be hovering over his shoulder, beaming like she had personally invented the internet, while my sister-in-law Keisha would be scanning the room for celebrities or potential sugar daddies bored out of her mind by the business talk. Inside the ballroom, Jason was in his element. He smoothed the lapel of his navy suit and flashed his teeth at a potential investor from Silicon Valley. "So good to meet you, Jason," the investor said, shaking his hand. "I saw your name on the pitch list. Your metrics look promising. Is your wife here tonight? I recall reading in your bio that she is a CPA. That is quite an asset for a startup." Jason laughed, waving his hand dismissively. "Oh, Sarah. No, she is not here. Poor thing is terribly under the weather. She came down with a sudden migraine right before we left. You know how women can be with their constitutions. She decided to stay back at the hotel and rest. Honestly, it is for the best. She gets so overwhelmed in rooms like this. She is very small town, if you know what I mean." Linda chimed in, nodding vigorously. "Yes, Sarah is very fragile. We told her to just sleep it off. Jason is the one with the vision anyway. Sarah just handles the paperwork. She is basically his secretary with a ring." They all chuckled. The investor nodded sympathetically, unaware that the fragile woman they were discussing was currently standing on the other side of the mahogany double doors adjusting the cuffs of a $3,000 white silk Armani suit. Keisha, who was standing next to Jason, rolled her eyes and took a sip of her champagne. "I honestly do not know why you even brought her, Jason. She is just dead weight. Tonight is about us, about the family, about the... When you get this funding, we are finally going to be on the level we deserve." "You are right, Keisha," Jason said, clinking his glass against hers. "To the family, and to the $5 million I'm going to talk Evelyn Sterling out of tomorrow." The room was loud, filled with the clatter of silverware and the roar of 100 conversations. But then the heavy mahogany doors at the far end of the ballroom began to open. They did not just open, they swung wide with a deliberate, slow weight that commanded attention. The chatter near the entrance died down first. Then the silence spread like a wave rippling across the room until the entire ballroom was quiet. Heads turned, glasses were lowered. Evelyn Sterling walked in. She was a legend in this industry, a shark who had eaten more companies than most people in this room had started. She wore a black velvet gown that looked like midnight wrapped around steel. But she was not alone, and the person walking beside her was not her assistant. It was me. I walked on her right side, matching her stride step for step. The white suit Evelyn had given me was a weapon. It fit me like a second skin, sharp, tailored, and pristine. My hair, which had been plastered to my skull with rainwater an hour ago, was now blown out in a sleek, voluminous style that framed a face I barely recognized. My makeup was flawless, emphasizing eyes that were no longer soft and pleading, but cold and calculating. I did not look down. I did not fidget. I scanned the room with the bored detachment of someone who owns the building. I saw the moment Jason spotted me. He was mid-laugh, his head thrown back, his hand gesturing with his wine glass. His eyes swept across the entrance and then snapped back. He froze. His mouth stayed open, but the sound died in his throat. He blinked rapidly as if his brain was refusing to process the visual data. Beside him, Linda squinted, adjusting her glasses. "Is that—" "No, it cannot be." Keisha looked up from her phone, annoyed by the silence. "What is everyone looking at?" Her voice trailed off. Her jaw dropped. I locked eyes with Jason across the crowded room. I saw the confusion morph into recognition and then into pure, unadulterated panic. He looked at Evelyn Sterling, the woman he needed to impress. Then he looked at me, the wife he had thrown out of his car. Then he looked back at Evelyn, realizing we were walking together. His hand started to shake. The glass of red wine he was holding slipped. It was almost in slow motion. The stem slid through his sweaty fingers. The glass tumbled through the air and shattered against the edge of the high-top table. Red wine exploded outward. It did not hit Jason. It splashed violently across the front of Keisha's champagne-colored satin dress. Keisha screamed a high-pitched shrill sound that shattered the sophisticated silence of the gala. "My dress! You idiot, my dress! It is ruined!" She frantically dabbed at the dark crimson stain spreading across her chest, looking like a gunshot wound. But Jason did not even look at her. He did not apologize. He did not grab a napkin. He shoved past his mother, nearly knocking her over. He shoved past a waiter. He marched straight toward me, his face flushing a deep, dangerous red. The room parted for him, whispers starting to hiss through the crowd. "Isn't that the guy pitching tomorrow? Is that his wife? I thought she was sick." Jason reached me just as Evelyn and I stopped near the center of the room. He was breathing hard. His nostrils flared. The charm was gone. The CEO mask had slipped, revealing the bully underneath. "Sarah," he hissed, his voice low but loud enough for the circle of people around us to hear. "What the hell are you doing here?" I looked at him calmly. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I let the silence stretch for a second, making him wait. "Hello, Jason," I said, my voice smooth and devoid of any warmth. "You seem flushed." He jabbed a finger in my face. "Do not play games with me. I told you to go home. I told you to get an Uber. How did you get in here? Did you sneak in? Are you stalking me?" He looked around frantically, trying to see if security was coming. "You are embarrassing me," he whispered harshly, leaning in close. "Look at you. You stole that suit, did you not? There is no way you could afford that. Take it off. Go home before I have you thrown out. You are acting like a crazy person." Evelyn Sterling took a sip of her sparkling water, watching Jason with an expression of mild amusement mixed with disgust. She did not speak yet. She was letting me handle this. She was letting me take the first bite. I looked at Jason's finger, still pointing in my face. Then I looked at the wine stain on his cuff. "I am not stalking you, Jason," I said, raising my voice just enough so the nearby investors could hear. "And I did not sneak in. I was invited." "Invited?" Jason scoffed a cruel sneer, twisting his lips. "Invited by who?" "The cleaning staff. You are a nobody, Sarah. You are here to ruin my big night because you are jealous. You are jealous that my family is successful, and you are just." He stopped because I had turned away from him. I turned to Evelyn. "Mrs. Sterling," I said, ignoring my husband completely. "I believe we were discussing the importance of accurate financial reporting before we were interrupted by the help." Jason's face went purple. "The help?" He looked like he was about to explode. He stepped forward, his hand raising as if to grab my arm to physically drag me out of the venue. "You listen to me, Sarah," he growled. But he never got to finish that sentence. "Mrs. Sterling, is this the sommelier? He seems to have spilled more wine than he has served." I said the words calmly, turning my back on Jason completely to address the billionaire woman beside me. I did not raise my voice. I did not tremble. I treated my husband, the man who had abandoned me in a storm less than 2 hours ago, like a clumsy employee who had interrupted a VIP conversation. The insult landed like a physical blow. The circle of wealthy investors and tech moguls surrounding us went deadly silent. I could feel the shock radiating off them. In their world, calling a CEO a waiter was the ultimate act of social castration. Evelyn Sterling did not miss a beat. She peered at Jason over the rim of her glasses, her expression one of mild distaste, as if she had just stepped in something unpleasant on the sidewalk. "I do not think he is, Staff Sarah," she drawled, her voice dripping with old money condescension. "The staff here are usually much better dressed, and they certainly know better than to shout at guests." Jason made a noise that sounded like a strangled animal. The veins in his neck were bulging against his collar. The humiliation was burning through him, stripping away his composure layer by layer. He was used to being the loud one, the dominant one, the one who dictated reality. Being ignored was his kryptonite. Being mocked was his nightmare. "You think you are funny, Sarah," he snarled, stepping into my personal space. The smell of stale wine and aggressive cologne washed over me. "You think because you put on a fancy suit, you can talk to me like that. You are nothing. You are my wife. You do what I say." He reached out his hand, clamping onto my upper arm. His fingers dug into the white silk of my suit. It was an instinctual move, a gesture of ownership he had used 1,000 times before to steer me out of rooms or silence me in arguments. But this was not our living room, and I was not alone. Before I could even pull away, a shadow moved. A massive hand clamped over Jason's wrist. It belonged to Marcus Evelyn's head of security, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. He did not say a word. He simply applied pressure. Jason yelped, his grip on me loosening instantly. He stumbled back, rubbing his wrist, looking up at the towering bodyguard in disbelief. "Do not touch the talent," Marcus said, his voice low and rumbling like thunder. "Step back, sir." I smoothed the sleeve of my jacket, brushing off the invisible residue of my husband's touch. I did not look at him. I looked at Marcus. "Thank you, Marcus." That was when Keisha exploded into the circle. She pushed through the crowd, her face twisted in a mask of rage. The red wine stain on her champagne dress had begun to dry, turning a rusty brown color that looked hideous under the chandeliers. She saw Jason rubbing his wrist. She saw me standing next to Evelyn, and she lost whatever shred of sanity she had left. She pointed a manicured finger at my face. Her acrylic nail was an inch from my nose. "You thief!" she shrieked. "You stole that invitation, did you not? There is no way you are on the list. I saw the guest list, Sarah. Your name was not on it. You probably seduced a guard or climbed through a window." She spun around looking for anyone with a badge. "Security!" she yelled, waving her arms frantically. "Someone get security over here. This woman is crashing the party. She is a fraud. She is trespassing. Arrest her!" The crowd murmured. People love a spectacle, and the Miller family was giving them a masterclass in public meltdowns. Linda, my mother-in-law, was standing behind Keisha, wringing her hands, not out of shame, but out of fear that this would hurt Jason's chances. "Sarah, please," Linda hissed, stepping forward. "Stop this charade. Give the suit back to whoever you took it from and leave. You are making a scene. Think of the family. Think of Jason's reputation." I looked at Linda. Think of the family. That was always her line. What she meant was think of the men. Think of the image. "I am thinking of the family, Linda," I said coldly. "I am thinking about how much better off I am without it." "You are going to jail," Keisha screamed, her voice cracking. "I am going to make sure they drag you out of here in handcuffs. Where is the manager?" "I want the manager." As if summoned by her hysteria, the crowd parted again. But it was not the security guards coming to drag me away. It was Mr. Henderson, the general manager of the Hotel Viking. He was a man of impeccable standards, dressed in a tuxedo that fit perfectly. He walked with a purpose, his eyes scanning the scene. Keisha lit up triumphantly. Finally, she said, grabbing Jason's arm, "Watch this. He is going to throw her out on the street where she belongs." Mr. Henderson walked straight past Jason. He walked straight past Keisha, who had her mouth open ready to lodge a complaint. He walked straight past Linda. He stopped directly in front of me. He bowed. It was not a slight nod. It was a deep, respectful bow of recognition. Ms. Sarah, he said, his tone warm and professional, completely ignoring the screaming woman beside me. I apologize for the delay. We wanted to ensure everything was perfect for your arrival. The silence in the room was now deafening. Jason's mouth hung open. Keisha's arm dropped to her side. Your luggage has been retrieved from the vehicle and sent up, Mr. Henderson continued. And as per Mrs. Sterling's request, we have prepared the presidential suite for you. The private chef is currently preparing the menu you prefer, and the champagne is on ice. He handed me a key card. It was not the plastic card guests usually got. It was heavy gold-colored and embossed with the hotel crest. The presidential suite. I felt the weight of the card in my hand. I knew exactly what that room cost. $5,000 a night. It was more than Jason's entire wardrobe budget for this trip. Jason and his family were staying in 2 standard double rooms on the 2nd floor overlooking the parking lot. I knew this because I had booked the rooms for them on my credit card 3 months ago. I saw the color drain from Jason's face. He looked from the gold key card to me and then to the manager. Wait, Jason stammered. There must be a mistake. She is my wife. We have a room 204. It is a standard double. She is staying with me. Mr. Henderson turned to Jason slowly. His expression went from warm to glacial in a nanosecond. I believe you are mistaken, sir, he said. Ms. Sarah is a guest of Mrs. Sterling. She is listed as a VVIP. Her accommodations are quite separate from yours. He turned back to me, smiling again. Is there anything else you require, Ms. Sarah? Perhaps we should have security escort these individuals away from you if they are bothering you. I looked at Jason. He looked small. He looked cheap. Standing there in his off-the-rack suit next to his stained sister and his frantic mother, he looked exactly like what he was. A fraud. No thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said, slipping the gold key into my pocket. I think they are done making fools of themselves for now. Besides, I have work to do. I turned to Evelyn, who was watching the entire exchange with a satisfied smirk. Shall we, Mrs. Sterling? I asked. I believe we have a strategy to discuss. Absolutely, Sarah, Evelyn said, linking her arm through mine. Let's go. The air in here is suddenly very stale. We turned and walked away. We left them standing there in the middle of the ballroom. I did not look back, but I could hear them. I heard Keisha gasp. I heard Linda sobbing quietly. And I heard Jason say in a voice filled with terrified confusion, the presidential suite. He was not sad that he had lost me. He was not sorry for what he had done. He was terrified because he realized he had just thrown away the most valuable asset he had ever owned. And he was terrified because he knew that whatever was happening in that presidential suite was going to destroy him. As we walked toward the elevators, I felt a vibration in my pocket. I pulled out my phone, a text message from Jason. Babe, let us talk. I think there has been a huge misunderstanding. I deleted the message without reading the rest. The elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise, shutting out the past, and taking me up to the top floor where the storm could not touch me. The presidential suite was silent, except for the rhythmic buzzing of my phone against the marble countertop. It had been vibrating non-stop for the past hour, dancing across the surface like an angry insect. I ignored it. Instead, I wrapped myself in the plush Egyptian cotton robe the hotel had provided and poured a glass of Krug champagne. I walked out onto the balcony. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and cold. Below me, the lights of Newport shimmered on the dark water. Somewhere down there, in a cramped standard room overlooking the parking lot, my husband was unraveling. I took a sip of champagne and finally looked at the phone. The screen was a wall of text messages from Jason. It was a masterclass in manipulation, a frantic oscillation between rage and fake affection. Text 1. Sarah, you are making a huge mistake. Evelyn Sterling is dangerous. She is using you to get to me. Come back to our room right now and we can fix this. Text 2. Stop acting like a child. You are embarrassing yourself in the family. Mom is crying. Do you enjoy making an old woman cry? Text 3. Babe, I am sorry about the bridge. I was just stressed. You know how I get. I bought you your favorite chocolates at the airport. Come down. I miss you. I let out a dry laugh. He missed me. No, he missed his safety net. He missed the woman who cleaned up his messes and balanced his checkbook so he could play the big shot CEO. I tossed the phone onto the sofa and sat down at the heavy oak desk where my laptop was already open. The blue light of the screen illuminated my face. Jason thought he was the king of his company, Miller Stream. He thought because his name was on the door and he gave the speeches that he owned it, but he forgot who built the castle. 5 years ago, when Miller Stream was just an idea in a garage, I set up the entire back-end infrastructure. I created the accounting system, I set up the payroll, and because I am a forensic accountant by trade, I built in a back door, an admin access key that bypassed all security protocols, a key that I never told him about. I typed in the command sequence. The screen flashed green. Access granted. I was in. I was not just looking at the public-facing numbers. I was looking at the raw data, the digital footprint of every dollar that moved in and out of the company. Jason was pitching Evelyn Sterling for $5 million in Series B funding tomorrow. He claimed he needed it for expansion and hiring top engineering talent. I opened the folder labeled R&D expenses, research and development. In a tech startup, this is usually the black hole where money goes. It is easy to hide things there, complicated server costs, prototype failures, consulting fees. But numbers have a language, and Jason was illiterate. I started scrolling through the last 6 months of transactions. On the surface, it looked legitimate. There were invoices for hardware-software licenses and server maintenance, but I clicked deeper. I cross-referenced the vendor ID numbers with the state business registry. My heart went cold. Vendor ID 4459 listed as Titan Server Solutions. A payment of $15,000 was made on October 14th. I ran a quick trace on the tax ID. Titan Server Solutions did not exist. The tax ID belonged to a luxury boutique in Manhattan, specifically the Chanel flagship store on 57th Street. I checked the date, October 14th. That was Keisha's birthday. I remembered that day. Jason had told me business was tight, so we could not afford to go out to dinner for our anniversary, which was 2 days later. Yet he had spent $15,000 of investor money to buy his sister-in-law a handbag and disguised it as server maintenance. I felt a flash of anger, but I pushed it down. Anger is useless. Evidence is power. I kept digging. November 1st, a wire transfer of $50,000 to a vendor listed as Global Logistics Consulting. I traced the routing number. It was not a consulting firm. It was an offshore account based in the Cayman Islands, linked to an entity called the Lucky 7 Holding Group. I knew that name. It was the parent company of the online gambling platform my mother-in-law, Linda, was addicted to. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Jason was not just bad with money. He was embezzling. He was taking capital raised from angel investors' funds meant to build a product and funneling it into his mother's gambling addiction and his sister-in-law's closet. I pulled up the summary report. I created a pivot table to aggregate the fraud. The numbers danced on the screen, coalescing into a damning portrait of a criminal. Unauthorized luxury goods expenditures, $75,000. Payments to unverified offshore accounts, $200,000. Cash withdrawals labeled as petty cash, $125,000. Personal travel expenses booked as client acquisition, $100,000. Total funds misappropriated, $500,000. $500,000. Gone. I looked at the timestamp on the most recent withdrawal. It was from this morning. $3,000 withdrawn from the corporate ATM card. That was the cash he was using for this trip. The suit he was wearing, the dinner he was eating, the gas, and the BMW he used to drive me to that bridge, it was all stolen money. I felt a strange sense of clarity. For years I had blamed myself. I thought maybe I was too critical. Maybe I was not supportive enough. I thought if I just budgeted better, if I just worked harder, I could make him happy. But you cannot budget away a crime. You cannot love someone into being honest. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jason. If you do not come down in 5 minutes, I am coming up there. Security cannot stop a husband from seeing his wife. I looked at the message, and then I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. I opened a new email draft. I attached the spreadsheet. I attached the scanned copies of the fake invoices. I attached the bank routing numbers, linking the payments to the casino and the boutique. I typed a subject line. Miller Stream Financial Audit Discrepancies, Internal Review. I did not send it to the police. Not yet. That would be too easy. That would be a mercy. Instead, I saved the file to a USB drive. I held the small metal stick in my hand. This was it. This was the nuclear football. Tomorrow morning, Jason was going to stand on stage and lie to the world. He was going to project a graph showing growth and stability, and I was going to be sitting in the front row holding the truth. I stood up and walked back to the balcony. The wind whipped my hair. I felt powerful. I felt dangerous. Jason wanted to come up here. He wanted to drag me back down to his level. He wanted to gaslight me into believing I was crazy for questioning him. Let him come, I whispered to the empty night. I walked to the door of the suite and engaged the deadbolt. Then I picked up the room service phone. Front desk, a polite voice answered. "This is Sarah in the presidential suite." I said, my voice steady. "I would like to leave a specific instruction for security." "Yes, Ms. Sarah." "If a man named Jason Miller attempts to access my floor, please inform him that any disturbance will result in immediate eviction from the hotel, and please send up another bottle of Krug. I have a lot of work to do." I hung up. I went back to the laptop. I had the numbers, but I needed more. I needed the visual proof. I accessed the cloud storage for his phone backup. Since I paid the bill for the family plan, I had the passwords. I scrolled through his photos, and there it was. A photo of Keisha posing with the Chanel bag captioned, "Thanks Big Bro, best CEO ever." A screenshot of a text conversation with his mother saying, "Don't worry, Mom, I covered the debt. Just tell Dad you won at bingo." I dragged every single file into my presentation. The night was young, and by the time the sun came up over Newport, I would have a weapon so sharp it would cut Jason Miller out of his own life with surgical precision. The morning sun over Newport was deceptive. It painted the harbor in soft pastel hues of gold and pink, making the world look innocent and new. But inside the Bellevue dining room of the Hotel Viking, the atmosphere was anything but innocent. I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window sipping a double espresso, my laptop closed on the table in front of me. Inside my blazer pocket was the silver USB drive containing the forensic evidence I had compiled until 3 in the morning. Evelyn Sterling sat across from me. She was reading the Wall Street Journal and eating a grapefruit with a surgical precision that was terrifying to watch. We did not need to speak. We had formed a silent pact over the course of the night. She knew I had the ammunition, and I knew she was ready to pull the trigger. The dining room was filling up with nervous entrepreneurs and sleep-deprived founders, fueling up for the biggest day of their careers. The smell of roasted coffee and expensive pastries filled the air. Then the temperature in the room seemed to drop. I did not need to look up to know who had entered. I could hear the heavy sigh, the distinct click of sensible heels that were trying too hard to be fashionable, and the rustle of a floral blouse that was far too loud for a business breakfast. Linda Miller, my mother-in-law, was approaching. She did not just walk to a table, she prowled. She scanned the room, saw me sitting with the most powerful woman in the industry, and made a beeline for us. She was holding a plate piled high with scrambled eggs and bacon comfort food for a woman who was clearly eating her feelings. She stopped right at our table. She did not ask to sit. She simply pulled out the empty chair next to Evelyn and collapsed into it, letting out a dramatic groan that turned several heads. "Sarah, there you are," Linda said, her voice trembling with a carefully curated mix of exhaustion and martyrdom. "I have been calling your room all morning. Jason has been sick with worry. He did not sleep a wink last night. Not a wink." I took a slow sip of my espresso, staring at her over the rim of the cup. "I slept wonderfully, Linda. The thread count in the presidential suite is quite impressive." Linda flinched. She adjusted her glasses, looking nervously at Evelyn, who had not lowered her newspaper. "Sarah, please," Linda hissed, leaning in. "We need to stop this nonsense. Jason is willing to forgive you for the scene you caused last night. He is a good man. He knows you are just emotional. But you need to come back to our table right now. People are staring. It looks bad for the family if we are separated." I set my cup down. "Forgive me," I asked calmly. "Forgive me for what exactly? For not drowning on the bridge where he left me? Or for not letting his sister scream at me in the lobby? Linda waved her hand dismissively as if I was discussing a minor scheduling conflict. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. It was just a little rain." Jason was stressed. He has the weight of the world on his shoulders trying to build this company for us, for our future. You should be supporting him, not sitting here playing dress-up with strangers. She glanced at Evelyn, trying to gauge if the billionaire was listening. Evelyn turned the page of her newspaper, the sound crisp and sharp in the tense silence. Linda decided to change tactics. She turned her charm on Evelyn, putting on her best sweet old lady smile. "Mrs. Sterling, I am so sorry for my daughter-in-law's behavior. She is a sweet girl, really, just a bit confused lately. I am Linda Miller, Jason's mother. I am the one who handles the morale of the company, you could say. We are a very close-knit family business." Evelyn finally lowered the paper. She looked at Linda over the top of her rimless reading glasses. Her eyes were cold and unblinking. "Mrs. Miller," Evelyn said. Her voice was smooth like polished granite. "I was just reviewing your son's pitch deck for this afternoon." Linda beamed, sitting up straighter. "Oh, surely it is impressive. Jason is a visionary. He certainly has a creative approach to accounting," Evelyn said, closing the paper and folding it neatly. "His executive summary claims that Miller Stream is currently in a liquidity crunch. He says he has less than $10,000 in operating cash flow, which is why he is asking me for $5 million. He claims the burn rate is due to high server costs." Linda nodded vigorously, her earrings jingling. "Yes, exactly. The servers. Technology is so expensive these days. That is why we need the investment, to keep the lights on." Evelyn picked up her silver spoon and stirred her tea. "That is fascinating," Evelyn continued, "because I was just admiring the valet parking lot on my way in, and I noticed a brand new Porsche 911 GT3 with a temporary dealer tag. A beautiful car. Retail price is somewhere around $200,000, I believe." Linda froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "The valet told me it belongs to Mr. Jason Miller," Evelyn said, locking eyes with Linda. "Now, I am not a mathematician, Mrs. Miller, but I'm curious. If a company has less than $10,000 in the bank, how does the CEO afford a $200,000 sports car?" The silence at the table was thick enough to choke on. Linda's face went through a spectrum of colors, pale white, bright red, and finally a sickly gray. She opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. She looked at me, panic swimming in her eyes. She needed a lie. She needed an explanation that would save her son's reputation without admitting to fraud. "Oh, that—" Linda stammered, her laugh sounding shrill and hysterical. "The car. Yes, well, that was a gift." "A gift?" Evelyn asked, raising an eyebrow. "From whom?" "The server fairy." No, Linda said, sweating now. It was a gift from the wife's family." "Yes, Sarah's parents. They are very supportive. They bought it for Jason to celebrate his hard work. You know how parents are. They wanted him to look successful." She looked at me, pleading with her eyes to play along. It was the same look she always gave me when she needed me to cover a bounce check or lie to a creditor. "Just go along with it, Sarah. Do it for the family." I looked at Linda. I looked at the woman who had watched her son push me out of a car and did nothing. I looked at the woman whose gambling debts were currently being paid off with the very money she was lying about. I smiled. It was a terrifyingly pleasant smile. "That is strange, Linda," I said, my voice carrying clearly to the nearby tables. Linda's eyes widened. "Sarah, don't," she mouthed. I continued, my voice steady and loud. "Because my father has been dead for 10 years, and my mother lives on a pension in Ohio and drives a 2012 Honda Civic. So I am very curious, Linda. Which wife are you talking about?" Linda gasped. "Did Jason get remarried last night?" I asked, leaning forward. "Because I certainly did not buy him a Porsche, and my dead father certainly did not buy him a Porsche. So who bought the Porsche, Linda? Was it the investors from the last round, or maybe it was purchased with the R&D budget?" Linda stood up so fast, her chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. People were staring now, openly watching the drama unfold. You are confused," Linda stammered, grabbing her plate. Her hands were shaking so badly a piece of bacon fell onto the table. "I need to go checking on Jason. He must be looking for me." She did not wait for a response. She turned and practically ran out of the dining room, leaving her dignity and a piece of bacon behind. Evelyn watched her retreat with a satisfied expression. She picked up her grapefruit spoon again. "You know, Sarah," Evelyn said casually, slicing into the fruit, "I usually hate breakfast meetings, but that was delicious." I picked up my espresso. "The appetizer is over," I said, looking at the door where Linda had fled. "Now wait until you see the main course." After breakfast, I went to the speaker preparation room. This was a restricted area behind the main stage where presenters loaded their slide decks and tested their microphones. It was a chaotic space filled with anxious founders, pacing back and forth, muttering their opening lines. I knew my husband's family better than they knew themselves. I knew that after the humiliation at breakfast, they would not just retreat, they would retaliate. They operated on a playground logic, where if someone hurts you, you have to hurt them back twice as hard. And since they lacked the intelligence to beat me in a battle of wits, they would resort to sabotage. I sat at one of the designated workstations. I opened my secondary laptop, a decoy machine I used for testing untrusted networks. On the desktop, I placed a single folder. I did not hide it inside subdirectories. I left it right in the center of the screen. I named the folder Sarah's Secret Strategy Do Not Open. It was the oldest trick in the book, a honeypot. I left the laptop open. I made sure the screen was visible to anyone walking by. Then I stood up, told the technical director I needed to grab a water, and walked out, leaving the device unattended. I did not go far. I walked to the VIP lounge where the main feed from the presentation room was being broadcast on a massive 80-inch LED screen. This was where the high-level investors, including Evelyn, sat to watch the preparations. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water and waited. It took exactly 7 minutes. On the large screen, the view switched. It was no longer showing the empty stage. It was showing a grainy, low-angle view from a webcam. The room went quiet. On the screen, a woman was looking frantically over her shoulder. It was Keisha. She had snuck into the tech room. She was wearing a trench coat over her stained dress, looking like a bad caricature of a spy. She approached my laptop. Her face filled the screen. We could see every pore, every layer of heavy makeup, and the look of malicious glee in her eyes. She reached out and touched the trackpad. "Got you," she whispered. Her voice was picked up clearly by the sensitive internal microphone I had boosted to maximum gain. She clicked on the folder named Sarah's Secret Strategy. In the lounge, a few investors chuckled. They realized what they were watching. It was a live feed of corporate espionage committed by an amateur. On the screen, Keisha frowned. The folder did not contain documents. It contained a single executable script. When she clicked it, she unknowingly maximized the webcam window and cast the feed to the main server. She typed on the keyboard. "Delete," she muttered. "Why won't you delete?" She started hitting the backspace key aggressively. "I am going to wipe this drive, you witch," she hissed. "You are not going to ruin Jason's day. This is my family's money." The lounge was dead silent now. The investors were not laughing anymore. They were watching a woman attempting to destroy intellectual property. Evelyn Sterling was sitting next to me. She took a sip of her tea and leaned in. "Is that your sister-in-law?" she asked. I nodded. "That is Keisha. She believes she is deleting my presentation. In reality, Keisha was just typing into a command prompt that was logging her every keystroke as evidence." On the screen, Keisha grew frustrated. She picked up the laptop and shook it as if that would help. Then she saw the little green light next to the camera lens. She froze. She squinted at the light. Then she looked at the screen and saw herself. She saw the recording indicator. "Oh no," she whispered. At that moment, the door to the tech room burst open. We saw it happen on the screen, and we heard it through the speakers. 2 large security guards wearing earpieces stepped into the frame. "Ma'am, step away from the device," one guard shouted. Keisha screamed and dropped the laptop. The feed spun dizzily for a second before going black as the computer hit the floor. The VIP lounge erupted into murmurs. "Did you see that? Who is that woman? Isn't she with the Miller Group?" I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I walked out of the lounge and down the hall toward the tech room. I arrived just as the guards were escorting a sobbing Keisha out into the corridor. Jason and Linda were already there, running down the hallway to intercept them. Let her go. Jason was yelling, his face red and sweaty. Get your hands off her. Do you know who I am? I'm a presenter. Sir, this woman was caught attempting to destroy equipment and data. The head of security set his hand resting on his belt. We have it all on video. Jason looked at Keisha, who was wailing about how I had set her up. Then he looked at me. I was standing calmly by the wall watching them. Jason's eyes darted around. He saw the hotel staff watching. He saw other CEOs watching. He needed an out. He needed to spin this immediately. He did not apologize. He did not ask Keisha what she was doing. He immediately switched into victim mode. He stepped between the guards and Keisha, holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender. Please listen, he said, his voice dropping to a sympathetic octave. My sister-in-law is not a criminal. She is unwell. Keisha stopped crying and looked at him confused. I am not unwell, Jason. I was trying to help you. Jason shushed her aggressively. She has been under severe stress. Jason continued addressing the security guard man to man. She is grieving. We just had a terrible loss in the family. She is confused. She thought that laptop belonged to me. She was just trying to find a photo of our late grandmother. She is not herself. Please have some compassion. He put his arm around Keisha, squeezing her shoulder hard enough to silence her. Look at her, he said. She is shaking. She is having a panic attack. We do not need the police. We just need to get her to a room to rest. I will pay for any damages. I will buy a brand new laptop right now. Just please do not make a scene. We have a presentation in 2 hours that could save our company. The security guard looked skeptical. He looked at me. Ms. Sarah, is this your laptop? He asked. I looked at Jason. He was pleading with his eyes. It was a pathetic, desperate look. If I pressed charges now, Keisha would be arrested, and Jason would miss his pitch. The game would end too early. I wanted him on that stage. I wanted him to climb all the way to the top of the mountain before I kicked him off. I stepped forward. It is okay, officer, I said. My husband is right. She is confused. The laptop is a decoy anyway. It has no real data on it. Jason exhaled a breath he had been holding for a minute. Thank you, Sarah, he mouthed. I am not pressing charges, I continued. However, I do not think it is safe for her to be wandering around the tech equipment. Perhaps she should be escorted back to the parking lot. I believe she has a lot of shopping bags to attend to. Jason nodded vigorously. Yes, absolutely. Mom, take her to the car. Linda grabbed Keisha's arm. Come on, honey, let's go. Keisha glared at me as she was dragged away. You think you are so smart? She spat. Jason is going to win today, and when he does, you will be nothing. I watched them walk away. Jason stayed behind, wiping sweat from his forehead. He adjusted his tie and looked at me. You are pushing it, Sarah, he said, his voice low. You are lucky I am a forgiving man. After I close this deal with Sterling, I'm going to make sure you never work in this town again. I smiled. Good luck with the pitch, Jason, I said. Make sure you check your slide deck. You never know what might have changed. I turned and walked back toward the VIP lounge. The trap had worked perfectly. Keisha was neutralized, and Jason was now terrified, paranoid, and off balance. He would be walking onto that stage sweating, thinking about what else I might have done. And he had no idea that the real bomb was not in the laptop Keisha dropped. It was in the presentation he was about to give. I left the VIP lounge, needing a moment of silence before the main event began. The hallway was lined with plush carpet that swallowed the sound of my footsteps. I pressed the down button for the elevator, intending to go to the lobby to clear my head. The brushed steel doors slid open. The car was empty. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors began to slide shut, I closed my eyes, exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding since yesterday. But the doors did not close. A hand thrust into the gap, triggering the safety sensor. The rubber bumper bounced back and the doors slid open again. Jason stood there. He looked different than he had 10 minutes ago. The panic and rage were gone, replaced by a smooth, practiced smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He adjusted his tie and stepped into the elevator with me. Going down, he asked casually, as if he hadn't abandoned me on a bridge less than 24 hours ago. I reached for the open door button to leave, but he was faster. He hit the close button and then immediately pressed the emergency stop switch. The elevator jerked to a halt between floors. The sudden silence was suffocating. We were trapped in a 6x6 steel box suspended in the shaft. Jason turned to me. He leaned back against the wall, putting his hands in his pockets, trying to look relaxed, but I could see a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. "Okay, Sarah," he said, his voice soft and low, the tone he used when he wanted something. "Let us take a breath. The last few hours have been crazy, right? Emotions are running high." I stood with my back straight, clutching my folder. "I am not emotional, Jason. I am very clear." He chuckled, shaking his head, as if I had told a cute joke. "Come on, babe. I know you. I know you are hurt, and I admit I was a jerk yesterday. The stress of this deal has been eating me alive. You know how much pressure is on me. Everything I do for us, for our future." He took a step closer, invading my personal space. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the stale scent of fear was nauseating. "I want to make it up to you," he said, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper. I was thinking, once I close this deal with Evelyn today, Miller Stream is going to be worth millions, and I want you to have your share. I was looking at cars earlier, not just for me, for you. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I flinched, but he ignored it. "How does a Mercedes G-Wagon sound?" he asked. "White with the tan interior. You have always wanted an SUV, right? I will buy it for you cash, next week, just you and me cruising down the coast." It was classic love bombing. Push me away, then pull me back with shiny objects. He thought I was a child who could be distracted by a toy. He thought my dignity had a price tag, and that price was a luxury car. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had vowed to spend my life with, and all I saw was a stranger who thought he could buy my silence. "I do not want a Mercedes?" "Jason," I said, my voice flat. He smiled condescendingly. "Okay, fine. A Range Rover then. Whatever you want, babe, but I need a small favor in return. Just a tiny little thing. Here it comes. I need you to talk to Evelyn," he said. "She trusts you. I saw the way she looked at you at breakfast. Just tell her that the numbers in my deck are conservative. Tell her that the discrepancies she saw were just clerical errors. Tell her that I am the genius behind the operation and you are just there for support." He put his hands on my shoulders, squeezing gently. "We are a team, Sarah. We are partners. Husband and wife. If I win, you win." I looked down at his hands on my shoulders. Then I reached into my leather portfolio. I did not pull out a calculator. I pulled out a thick envelope with the letterhead of a top divorce firm in Providence. I pushed his hands off me. "We are not partners, Jason," I said, handing him the envelope, "and we are not a team." He took the envelope, frowning. "What is this?" "Open it," I said. He ripped open the seal. He pulled out the document. His eyes scanned the header. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." He froze. He read the first paragraph. Then he looked up at me, and his face twisted. The charming mask fell away instantly, revealing the ugly narcissist underneath. "Divorce," he scoffed. "You are serving me with divorce papers in an elevator before the biggest meeting of my life." "I have already signed them," I said. "The terms are simple. I want half of the marital assets, which currently amounts to debt because of your gambling mother. I want my name off the mortgage, and I want you to admit to the fraud you committed using my identity." Jason laughed. It was a loud barking sound that echoed in the metal box. "You are insane," he said. "You are actually insane. You think you can threaten me." "It is not a threat, Jason," I said. "It is an ultimatum. Sign the papers. Acknowledge the separation. Or I walk into that boardroom in an hour and I tell Evelyn Sterling exactly where her $5 million is going to go. I will show her the Chanel receipts. I will show her the casino transfers." Jason stared at me. His eyes went dark. He looked at the papers in his hand. Then he looked at me with pure contempt. "You will not do that," he said quietly. "Watch me," I challenged. "No, you won't." He took the divorce papers in both hands, and with a violent motion he ripped them in half. Then he ripped them again, and again. He threw the confetti of legal documents onto the floor of the elevator. "You are bluffing, Sarah," he sneered, stepping over the torn paper. "You do not have the guts. You are nothing without me. Who are you? You are just a boring accountant. I am the visionary. I am the star. I made you. I gave you a life. Without me, you are just a lonely girl with a laptop." He leaned in his face inches from mine. "You will not say a word to Evelyn. You are going to sit in that audience and you are going to clap when I finish. And if you try to ruin this for me, I will destroy you. I will tell everyone you are unstable. I will tell them you are off your meds. Who do you think they will believe? The successful CEO or the jealous ex-wife?" He turned around and punched the emergency stop button again to release it. The elevator jolted back to life. I looked at the torn papers on the floor. I looked at his back. He thought destroying the paper destroyed the intent. He thought intimidation was leadership. The elevator chimed as we reached the lobby. The doors opened. Jason turned back to me one last time. He adjusted his suit jacket, smoothing out the wrinkles. "Fix your face," he said coldly. "You look pathetic." He walked out of the elevator, strutting toward the conference hall like a king. I stood there for a moment alone in the box. I looked down at the shredded remains of my marriage on the floor. He was right about one thing. I was just an accountant, but he forgot what accountants do. We keep score, and we always balance the books. I stepped out of the elevator, leaving the mess behind. I did not need him to sign the papers to destroy him. He had just signed his own death warrant. The green room behind the main stage of the Sterling Summit was designed to be a sanctuary for nervous speakers. It had plush velvet sofas, low lighting, and a mini fridge stocked with Fiji water and anxiety medication. But for my husband, Jason Miller, it was a torture chamber. We were 30 minutes away from his time slot. The countdown clock on the wall was ticking away in bright red LED numbers. 29:59, 29:58. Every second that passed seemed to strip another layer of confidence off Jason's face. He was sitting at a glass table, his expensive MacBook Pro open in front of him. His knee was bouncing up and down so violently it was shaking the table. I stood by the door examining a painting on the wall. I was not there to support him. I was there because Evelyn Sterling had requested all presenters and their key advisors be present in the holding area for a final sound check. Since Jason had listed me as his CFO on the application paperwork, a lie he told to add credibility, I was required to be in the room. Suddenly, Jason slammed his mouse against the table. "No, no, no," he yelled. "This cannot be happening. Not now." He started typing furiously, hitting keys with unnecessary force. "What is wrong?" I asked. I did not ask because I cared. I asked because I wanted to watch him squirm. "It is the file," Jason spat, staring at the screen with wild eyes. "The presentation deck. It will not open. It says the file is corrupted." He spun the laptop around to face me. "Look at this," he demanded. "What does error 404 mean? I saved it to the desktop this morning. I saw it there." I glanced at the screen. I did not even need to touch the computer to know what he had done. It was the classic mistake of a man who thought he knew everything but actually knew nothing about technology. "You did not save the file, Jason," I said calmly. "You saved the shortcut. You dragged the icon from your cloud drive to the desktop, but you did not download the actual data. And since the hotel firewall blocks unverified cloud connections, you are trying to open a ghost file." Jason's face went white. "Fix it," he ordered. I looked at him. "Excuse me." "Fix it, Sarah," he repeated, his voice rising to a panic. "You are the computer genius. Get into the back end or whatever you do and retrieve the file. I have 28 minutes before I have to walk out there. If I do not have my slides, I am dead." I checked my watch. "That sounds like a personal problem, Jason," I said. "I am just a guest, remember. I am just the woman you left on a bridge. I am sure you can figure it out. You are the visionary after all." I turned to walk away. I had no intention of helping him. If he walked out onto that stage with a blank screen, it would be humiliating, but it would not be the total destruction I had planned. I needed him to present. I needed him to show the fake numbers so I could prove the fraud. But watching him beg was a delicious appetizer. Jason jumped up from his chair. He rushed over and blocked the door, preventing me from leaving. "You are not going anywhere," he hissed. "Get out of my way, Jason." "No," he said, breathing heavily. "You are going to sit down at that computer and you are going to recover my file. You are going to make sure the animations work and the transitions are smooth. You are going to do it right now." "And if I don't?" I asked, crossing my arms. Jason's eyes narrowed. The panic in them was replaced by something darker, something reptilian. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times and then turned it toward me. I looked at the image. It was me. Or at least, it looked like me. It was an image of a woman who shared my face, my hair, and my body type. She was in a compromising position in a hotel room that looked vaguely like the one we had stayed in during our honeymoon. But I knew instantly it was fake. The lighting was too perfect. The shadows were wrong. And most importantly, I knew I had never done that. "It is amazing what AI can do these days, isn't it?" Jason said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. I stared at the image. Deep fake pornography. It was the weapon of choice for cowards who could not win a fair fight. "What is this, Jason?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous low. "This," Jason said, waving the phone, "is your insurance policy. And mine." He took a step closer, invading my personal space. "If you do not walk over to that laptop and fix my presentation," he whispered, "I am going to upload this to every contact in your email list. I will send it to your clients. I will send it to the board of directors of the charities you audit. And I will definitely send it to Evelyn Sterling." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air like toxic gas. "I will tell them it is real," he continued. "I will tell them you have a secret life. By the time you prove it is a fake, your reputation will be destroyed. No one hires a forensic accountant who has nudes circulating on the dark web, Sarah. Your credibility will be zero." I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It was not fear. It was the absolute freezing realization that I was married to a monster. He was not just selfish. He was a predator. In the United States, extortion is a federal crime under Title 18 of the U.S. Code, specifically checking Section 875 regarding interstate communications. Threatening to damage a person's reputation to extract value or services is a felony punishable by up to 2 years in federal prison. If the threat involves interstate commerce like the internet, the sentence can be much longer. Jason did not know the law, but I did. I slowly reached into my blazer pocket. I needed him to say it again. I needed it on record. I pulled out my phone. I held it at my side, my thumb hovering over the voice memo app. I pressed the red button. "Let me get this straight, Jason," I said, keeping my voice trembling slightly to simulate fear. "You are telling me that if I do not perform labor for you, if I do not fix your commercial presentation, you will release sexually explicit fabricated images of me to the public. You are blackmailing me." Jason laughed. He thought he had won. He thought my trembling voice was submission. "Call it what you want, Sarah," he sneered. "I call it leverage. Yes, if you do not fix the file, the pictures go live in 10 minutes. Do we have a deal, or do you want to be famous on the internet?" "Got him." I felt the phone vibrate in my hand, confirming the recording was active. I had his confession. I had the quid pro quo. I had the threat. I slid the phone back into my pocket. "Okay, Jason," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You win." I walked past him to the table. I sat down at his laptop. Jason let out a sigh of relief. He slumped onto the sofa behind me, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I knew you would see reason," he said, his arrogance returning instantly. "Make sure you bold the revenue projections on slide 4. I want those to pop." I stared at the screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard. He wanted me to fix the file. He wanted me to save him. I accessed the temporary cache folder. I found the backup file he had failed to save properly. It was easy. It took me 30 seconds to restore the data. But as I looked at the file, I realized I had a choice. I could delete everything and let him fail now, or I could let him proceed. If I deleted it, he would just blame technical difficulties. He would play the victim. He would say the hotel equipment failed him. He would live to scam another day. But if I restored it, if I let him walk out onto that stage and present these numbers, I looked at the revenue projections on slide 4. They were completely fabricated. He was claiming $2 million in confirmed contracts that did not exist. If he presented this to Evelyn Sterling, it was not just a lie. It was securities fraud. It was a federal crime committed in front of witnesses. I needed him to give that speech. I needed him to dig his own grave. I typed in the command to restore the file. The progress bar filled up. Download complete. I opened the deck. The slides loaded. The charts appeared. The lies were ready for broadcast. I stood up. "It is done," I said. Jason jumped up and rushed to the computer. He clicked through the slides, his eyes lighting up. "Yes, perfect. You see, Sarah, this is why I keep you around. You are useful when you want to be." He checked his watch. 5 minutes. He straightened his tie in the mirror. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked at his reflection and practiced his winning smile. He turned to me. "You can go find a seat in the audience now," he said, dismissing me. "Try to look happy. And Sarah," he tapped his pocket where his phone was, "do not try anything stupid during the Q&A. Remember what I have on my phone. One wrong move and your career is over." I looked at him one last time. I looked at the man who had just committed a felony to force me to help him commit another felony. "Break a leg, Jason," I said. I walked out of the green room. As soon as the door closed behind me, I pulled out my phone. I stopped the recording. I renamed the file Extortion Evidence Exhibit A. Then I uploaded it to 3 different secure cloud servers. I walked down the hallway toward the ballroom. The air was buzzing with anticipation. The investors were taking their seats. Evelyn Sterling was waiting in the front row. Jason thought he had leverage. He thought he had a weapon. He had no idea that he had just handed me the final nail for his coffin. I walked into the ballroom and spotted Evelyn. She had saved a seat for me right next to her. I sat down. "Is everything ready?" Evelyn whispered, leaning in. I looked at the stage where the lights were dimming. I felt the weight of the recording in my pocket and the USB drive in my hand. "He is ready," I said. "He threatened to release fake porn of me if I didn't help him fix his slides." Evelyn's hand tightened around her water glass. Her knuckles went white. "He did what she asked," her voice icy. "I recorded it," I said. "It is a federal crime." Evelyn looked at me. There was a fierce protectiveness in her eyes, a fury that transcended business. "Let him speak," she said. "Let him say every word. And when he is done, we are going to burn him to the ground." The music swelled. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Please welcome the CEO of Miller Stream, Mr. Jason Miller." Jason jogged onto the stage. The spotlight hit him. He waved to the crowd, smiling that fake, confident smile. He looked successful. He looked powerful. He looked like a man who had gotten away with it. I sat back in my chair and crossed my legs. "Start talking, Jason. Every word you say is just adding time to your sentence." The hallway outside the grand ballroom was lined with mirrors, reflecting the high stakes of the day. I walked away from the green room, feeling the weight of the phone in my pocket. I had the recording of Jason attempting to extort me, but I knew the war was not over. Jason was on stage, but his soldiers were still patrolling the perimeter. I headed toward the side entrance of the ballroom, intending to slip into the seat Evelyn had saved for me. My heels moved silently on the thick plush carpet. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. I needed to be calm. I needed to be the picture of a supportive wife while I waited for the guillotine to drop. But as I turned the corner near the restrooms, a figure stepped out from the shadows of an alcove. It was Keisha. She had been waiting for me. She looked disheveled. Her makeup was smeared from her earlier tears, and there was a frantic desperation in her eyes that made her dangerous. She was no longer just the spoiled sister-in-law. She was a woman who saw her future slipping away, and she blamed me for it. She stepped directly into my path, blocking the double doors that led to the auditorium. "You are not going in there," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. I stopped, keeping a safe distance. I did not want to be anywhere near her. Move, Keisha, I said calmly. Jason is starting his presentation. I need to be in my seat. You are going to ruin it, she hissed, taking a step toward me. I know you, Sarah. I know that look in your eyes. You did not fix that file to help him. You did it to set him up. You put something in that slide deck, didn't you? A virus, a bad image, something to humiliate him. She poked me in the chest with a sharp manicured nail. I am not going to let you destroy my brother, she said. He promised me that this deal would change our lives. He promised to pay off my credit cards. He promised to buy me a house. You are just a jealous, bitter shrew who cannot stand seeing him succeed. I brushed her hand away. I am not the one ruining him, Keisha, I said. He is ruining himself. And frankly, so are you. You already embarrassed yourself with the laptop. Do you really want round two? Keisha's eyes narrowed. She looked around the hallway. It was relatively empty. Most of the guests were inside watching the pitch. There were only a few hotel staff members at the far end of the corridor, and a couple of late arrivals checking their coats. A twisted idea seemed to form in her mind. I saw the calculation happen in real time. She realized she could not stop me physically. She was shorter than me, and she was wearing a dress that restricted her movement. But she knew how to play the victim. She had been playing the victim her entire life. You touched me, she whispered, a strange smile playing on her lips. I took a step back, holding my hands up. I did not touch you, Keisha. Get out of my way. You pushed me, she said louder. Then she did something that would have been impressive if it were not so pathetic. She threw herself backward. It was a performance worthy of a daytime soap opera. She let out a high-pitched scream, flailing her arms as if she had been shoved with tremendous force. She stumbled back a few steps to gain momentum and then collapsed onto the floor. But she did not just fall. She made sure to hit the ground with a loud thud, knocking over a decorative vase on a pedestal near the door. The porcelain shattered, sending shards skittering across the carpet. Keisha landed in a heap, clutching her stomach. "Help!" she screamed. "Help me!" She pushed me. Oh my God, my baby. I froze. My baby. Keisha was not pregnant. I knew for a fact she was on birth control because I was the one who paid for her prescription refills since she was still on Jason's insurance plan. Just last week she had been complaining about cramps and drinking wine, but the people in the hallway did not know that. The few stragglers and hotel staff rushed over, eyes wide with horror. A waiter dropped his tray. A woman in a business suit gasped, covering her mouth. "Oh my God! Call an ambulance!" the woman yelled, running to Keisha's side. Keisha was writhing on the floor, squeezing her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. She curled into a fetal position, protecting her stomach. "She pushed me," Keisha sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She is crazy. She attacked me. I told her I was pregnant and she just shoved me. She wants to kill my baby." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and ugly. I stood there stunned by the sheer audacity of the lie. Assaulting a pregnant woman. That was not just a social faux pas. That was a felony. That was immediate arrest. The hallway filled up quickly. The noise of the shattering vase had drawn attention. The security guards I had seen earlier came running. "What happened here?" The head of security barked, looking from Keisha to me. "She pushed her," the woman in the business suit said, glaring at me with disgust. I heard the scream. "This poor woman says she is pregnant." "Monster," someone whispered. "Who pushes a pregnant woman?" another voice said. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was mob mentality. They did not need facts. They had a crying woman on the floor and a stoic woman standing over her. The narrative was set. "Officer, arrest her!" Keisha wailed, looking up at the guard with wide, tear-filled eyes. "I want to press charges. My stomach hurts. Oh God, please save my baby." The guard turned to me. His hand moved to the handcuffs on his belt. "Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back," he said sternly. "Wait," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I did not touch her. She threw herself down. "She is lying. We will sort that out at the station," the guard said, stepping closer. "Right now we have an injured victim. Turn around." Keisha peeked through her fingers, crying louder to drown out my defense. She was winning. She knew that if I was arrested and dragged out in handcuffs, I would not be able to enter the ballroom. I would miss Jason's speech. I would miss the moment of truth. and the scandal of being arrested for assault would discredit anything I said later. It was a desperate nuclear option, but it was working. The guard grabbed my arm. I said, "Turn around," he commanded. I looked at Keisha. She was smirking behind her hands. A tiny, victorious smirk that only I could see. Suddenly, the double doors to the ballroom burst open. The sound of applause from inside spilled out for a brief second before being cut off as the doors swung shut. A figure stepped into the chaotic hallway. It was not Jason. It was not a doctor. It was Evelyn Sterling. She must have been waiting for me near the entrance, wondering why I had not come in. She took one look at the scene, the shattered vase, the crying woman on the floor, the guard holding my arm, and she understood immediately. Evelyn walked into the circle of people. She did not run. She parted the crowd like the Red Sea. Her presence commanded absolute silence. "Release her," Evelyn said to the guard. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of $1 billion. The guard hesitated. "Mrs. Sterling, this woman is accused of pushing a pregnant lady." "I said release her," Evelyn repeated, "and step away from my guest." The guard let go of my arm, looking confused. Evelyn looked down at Keisha. Keisha was still acting, clutching her stomach, moaning softly. She looked up at Evelyn, hoping to gain sympathy from the billionaire. "Mrs. Sterling." Keisha sobbed. "Sarah, she tried to hurt my baby. I just wanted to wish Jason luck and she attacked me." Evelyn stared at her. She did not blink. She adjusted her glasses and looked up at the ceiling. Then she looked back down at Keisha. Young woman Evelyn said, her tone dripping with ice. "Do you know who owns this hotel?" Keisha blinked, her sobbing pausing for a second. "What?" "My holding company acquired the Hotel Viking 3 years ago," Evelyn said. "And when we renovated, I personally oversaw the installation of the security system." Evelyn pointed a long, slender finger toward the corner of the ceiling directly above the alcove where Keisha had been hiding. "There is a 4K resolution camera right there," Evelyn said. "It records audio and video at 60 frames per second, and there is another one at the other end of the hall." The crowd looked up. The black domes of the cameras were clearly visible. Evelyn pulled out her phone. "I have the security feed linked to my device," she continued, tapping the screen, "and I just watched the playback while I was standing in the doorway." She turned the phone around so the guard and the bystanders could see. "Look closely," Evelyn narrated. "Here is Sarah standing 5 feet away. Here is you screaming, and here is you throwing yourself backward like a linebacker in a bad Super Bowl commercial." The video on the screen was undeniable. It showed me standing perfectly still with my hands raised. It showed Keisha launching herself into the vase. The crowd gasped. The woman who had called for an ambulance took a step back, her face turning red. "Oh my God," she lied, the woman whispered. Evelyn looked at Keisha, who was still on the floor, but had stopped moaning. "And regarding your pregnancy," Evelyn added, delivering the final blow, "I assume that is also a fabrication, considering I saw you drinking a double vodka tonic at the bar last night. Unless you are in the habit of giving your unborn child fetal alcohol syndrome, I suggest you drop the act." The humiliation in the hallway was absolute. Keisha realized the game was up. The audience had turned. The sympathy had evaporated, replaced by disgust and anger. The guard looked at Keisha, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, get up," he ordered. "Filing a false police report is a crime." Keisha scrambled to her feet. The phantom pain in her stomach vanished instantly. She stood there dusting off her dress, looking from me to Evelyn to the angry guard. She scared me," Keisha stammered, trying to pivot. "It was emotional abuse. I fell because I was scared." "Save it," the guard snapped. "You are coming with me. We need to have a chat about that broken vase and the disruption of peace." Keisha looked at me with pure hatred. "This is your fault," she screamed as the guard took her arm. "You ruin everything." I straightened my blazer. I looked at her calm and composed. "No, Keisha," I said. "Gravity ruined everything. And the fact that you are a terrible actress." Evelyn stepped next to me. "Are you all right, Sarah?" she asked. "I am fine," I said. "Just another day with the Millers." "Then let us go inside," Evelyn said, gesturing to the doors. "Your husband is 5 minutes into his speech. I believe he is just getting to the part about his financial integrity. We would not want to miss that. We turned our backs on Keisha. As the guard led her away, kicking and screaming about her rights, Evelyn and I walked through the double doors. We entered the darkened ballroom. The air was cool and smelled of anticipation. On stage, Jason was pacing back and forth, pointing at a graph that showed a sharp upward trend. Our growth is organic, Jason was saying, his voice amplified by the sound system. We believe in transparency. We believe in building trust with our partners. I walked down the center aisle. My heels clicked on the floor, but the sound was drowned out by Jason's voice. I found my seat in the front row. I sat down next to Evelyn. Jason looked down. The stage lights were bright, but he could see us. He saw Evelyn, and then he saw me. He smiled, thinking I was there to support him, thinking his threat had worked, thinking his sister had successfully delayed me, or that I had simply submitted. He had no idea that his sister was in a security holding cell. He had no idea that I had his confession in my pocket. And he had no idea that the graph behind him was about to be proven false in front of everyone he wanted to impress. I crossed my legs and looked up at him. I smiled. It was the smile of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap. Proceed, Jason, I thought. Tell us more about trust. The ballroom was dark except for the brilliant white spotlight following my husband as he prowled across the stage. Behind him, a massive high-definition screen displayed the logo of Millerstream in a sleek, futuristic font. Jason looked every inch the tech visionary he desperately wanted to be. He had removed his tie and unbuttoned his collar, adopting a casual Steve Jobs aesthetic that screamed calculated nonchalance. He clicked a remote in his hand and the screen changed to a graph with a green line shooting upward at a near vertical angle. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason said, his voice smooth and amplified, filling the cavernous room. When I started Millerstream, people told me it was impossible. They said the market was saturated. They said our burn rate would destroy us before we even launched the beta version. But I do not believe in the word impossible. I believe in disruption. He paused, letting the word hang in the air. The audience of potential investors nodded. They loved buzzwords. We did not just launch. Jason continued pacing to the edge of the stage. We dominated. In the last quarter alone, we have seen user engagement triple. But more importantly, we have achieved what no other startup in this sector has managed to do. We have achieved hypergrowth while simultaneously slashing our operating costs by 20%. He clicked the remote again. Slide 4 appeared. This was the slide I had restored, the slide he had forced me to fix under threat of blackmail. It showed 2 columns. One was revenue, which was inflated by imaginary contracts. The other was expenses, which were impossibly low. I sat in the front row, my hands folded in my lap. I watched the numbers glowing on the screen. Research and development expenses down 15%. Administrative overhead down 10%. Net profit margin projected at 30% by Q4. It was a beautiful fiction. It was a fairy tale told in spreadsheets. Jason pointed at the screen. Look at these numbers, he said with passion. This is not just accounting. This is efficiency. We have streamlined our back end using a proprietary algorithm that optimizes server load. We have cut the fat. We are lean, we are hungry, and we are ready to scale. That is why I am asking for $5 million today, not to save a dying company, but to pour jet fuel into a rocket that is already taking off. The audience broke into murmurs of approval. I saw heads nodding. I saw people taking notes. Jason was selling it. He was charismatic. He was handsome. And he was lying through his teeth with the confidence of a sociopath. He smiled, basking in the attention. He thought he had done it. He thought the hard part was over. But then a hand went up in the front row. It was not just any hand. It was Evelyn Sterling's hand. Usually during these pitch events, questions are saved for the end. Interrupting a presenter is considered rude. But when you are the richest person in the room, you do not follow etiquette. You make the rules. Jason stopped mid-sentence. He saw Evelyn's hand. He faltered for a microsecond, his smile twitching, but he recovered quickly. "Ah, Mrs. Sterling," Jason said, bowing his head slightly. "I am honored. Do you have a question about the technology?" Evelyn did not stand up. She did not need to. She sat in her chair, holding a microphone that a runner had scrambled to bring her. "Not about the technology, Mr. Miller," Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the room like a razor blade. "I have a question about the math." The room went dead silent. The murmurs stopped. Jason laughed, a nervous sound that was a little too loud. "The math. Well, the numbers speak for themselves, do they not?" "Do they?" Evelyn asked. She looked down at a tablet in her lap, then back up at the stage. "You claim on slide 4 that your operating costs decreased by 20% last quarter. That is a significant reduction, especially for a company claiming to be in a hyper-growth phase. Usually when you scale up, expenses go up. You hire more people, you buy more server space." Jason nodded, sweating slightly under the spotlight. "Yes, well, as I said, we have a proprietary algorithm. We are very efficient." Evelyn took off her glasses. "Mr. Miller," Evelyn said, "I have been investing in tech for 30 years. There is no algorithm in the world that can reduce server costs by 20% while user traffic triples. That is physically impossible unless you are negotiating illegal rates or you are simply not paying your vendors." Jason wiped his forehead. The spotlight was suddenly looking less like a halo and more like an interrogation lamp. "I assure you, Mrs. Sterling, everything is paid for," Jason stammered. We have excellent relationships with our vendors." Evelyn leaned forward. "Then who validated these numbers?" she asked. "Who is your chief financial officer? Who is the auditor who signed off on this miracle of efficiency? Because looking at this graph, it defies the fundamental laws of economics. I would like to know the name of the CPA who put their license on the line for this presentation. This was the trap." Jason froze. He looked at the screen. He looked at the audience. He saw doubt creeping into their faces. He knew he could not say it was an external firm because Evelyn would check. He could not say he did it himself because investors do not trust CEOs who grade their own homework. He needed a shield. He needed a scapegoat, a name that sounded credible but one he could control. His eyes scanned the front row. They landed on me. I saw the gears turning in his head. He remembered the threat he made in the green room. He remembered the fake photos on his phone. He remembered me sitting quietly, fixing his slide. He thought I was broken. He thought I was terrified. He thought I was on his team because I had no other choice. A smile of relief spread across his face. He walked to the edge of the stage right in front of me. He extended his hand, pointing directly at me. "I am glad you asked, Mrs. Sterling," Jason said, regaining his swagger. "The reason we are so confident in our numbers is that we keep it in the family. We do not trust outsiders with our sensitive data." He gestured for me to stand up. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jason announced, his voice booming with pride, "the person who audited these numbers is sitting right here, my wife, Sarah Miller." The spotlight swung from the stage and hit me. I was blinded for a moment by the white light. Jason continued, "Not only is she my wife, but she is a certified forensic accountant with one of the top ratings in the state. She is the most meticulous person I know. She went through every receipt, every invoice, and every line item personally. She built the financial model you see on the screen." He looked down at me, his eyes pleading and threatening at the same time. "Play along," his eyes said. "Remember the pictures." "She is the one who approved this presentation," Jason said. "If Sarah says the numbers are real, then they are real. I trust her with my life, and I trust her with this company. Sarah, darling, why don't you stand up and tell Mrs. Sterling that the books are clean?" The room turned to look at me. Hundreds of eyes. Evelyn Sterling turned to me, her face unreadable, waiting for my move. Jason stood on the stage, beaming down at me like a benevolent god. He had just thrown me to the wolves, expecting me to bark on command. He had staked his entire reputation and the $5 million on my silence. He thought he was safe. I uncrossed my legs. I smoothed the skirt of my white Armani suit. I took the microphone that Evelyn held out to me. I stood up. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I looked up at Jason. I saw the triumphant gleam in his eyes. He thought he had won. I brought the microphone to my lips. "Thank you, Jason," I said, my voice steady and clear. "It is true. I am a certified forensic accountant. And it is true that I have access to all the financial records of Miller Stream." Jason nodded encouragingly. "Go on, tell them." I turned to face the audience. I turned to face Evelyn. And because I am a certified professional bound by a code of ethics, I said I cannot sit here and let this presentation continue. Jason's smile faltered. What I asked. I looked back at the screen. The numbers you see on slide 4 are not accurate, I said. Jason laughed a nervous, strangled sound. Sarah, you are joking. She is joking everyone. She has a dry sense of humor. I am not joking, I said louder, cutting him off. Mr. Miller did not reduce operating costs by 20%. The reason the expenses look so low is because he has been categorizing personal expenditures as capital investments to hide them from the balance sheet. A gasp went through the room. Sarah, shut up. Jason hissed away from his microphone, his face turning red. Sit down. I did not sit down. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive. I have the real audit right here, I said, holding it up. Jason looked at the drive. He looked at me. And for the first time since he left me on that bridge, he looked truly terrified. I walked up the short stairs to the stage. The sound of my heels on the wood was the only sound in the room. Jason took a step back, his smile faltering. He looked at the USB drive in my hand, and then he looked at the tech console podium where the presentation laptop was sitting. He lunged for the laptop, but I was closer. I didn't plug the drive into his computer. I plugged it into the master HDMI port on the podium that overrode the presenter's input. It was a feature I knew about because I had read the technical writer for the event while Jason was busy getting his hair styled. The screen behind us flickered. The sleek, futuristic blue graph showing the fake growth disappeared. The beautiful logo vanished. In its place, a stark white spreadsheet appeared. It was high contrast and brutal in its simplicity. It was not a marketing slide. It was a forensic audit report. Jason froze. He stared at the screen. What is this? He stammered into his microphone. This is a glitch. Technical support. Cut the feed. Do not cut the feed. Evelyn Sterling's voice rang out from the front row. Her microphone was still active. Let us see the data, Jason. You said your wife approved the numbers. Let her present them. I stood behind the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked at the audience of billionaires and bankers. The slide you just saw was a fabrication. I said, my voice echoing clearly through the hall. My husband claims that operating costs have gone down due to efficiency. In reality, the capital has been drained systematically through 3 primary channels. I clicked the remote. The spreadsheet zoomed in on the first category. Category 1, Research and Development, I read aloud. On the screen, a scanned invoice appeared. It was titled Titan Server Solutions. The total was $15,000. Jason claims this was for cloud storage expansion, I explained. But if you look at the merchant code associated with this transaction, it does not map to a technology vendor. It maps to a luxury retail boutique in Manhattan. I clicked again. The invoice overlay faded and a photo appeared next to it. It was a screenshot from Instagram. It showed Keisha holding a black quilted Chanel classic flat bag with gold hardware. The timestamp on the photo matched the date of the invoice perfectly. This is the Titan server, I said, dryly. It is made of caviar leather and it cost your investors $15,000. It is currently in the possession of the woman who was just escorted out by security for filing a false police report. The audience gasped. A ripple of shock went through the room. I saw people pulling out their phones, taking pictures of the screen. Jason ran toward me. Sarah, stop this. You are violating non-disclosure agreements. This is proprietary. He reached for the cable, but Marcus, the head of security, stepped out from the wings of the stage. He did not touch Jason. He just stood there crossing his massive arms. Jason stopped dead in his tracks. I clicked the remote again. Category 2, Marketing and Client Acquisition. I continued. A new set of numbers appeared. $50,000 wired to Global Logistics Consulting. This entity is registered in the Cayman Islands, I said. My husband claims this was a retainer for international shipping logistics. However, my audit traced the routing number through a series of shell accounts. I brought up the next slide. It was a bank statement from the Cayman account. The funds were immediately transferred to the Lucky 7 Casino and Resort in Las Vegas. I turned to look at Jason. He was pale, shaking his head, muttering no over and over again. This was not for shipping, I told the audience. This was to cover a marker, a gambling debt incurred during a bachelor party weekend that was billed as a strategic offsite. The murmurs in the room were turning into angry shouts. These were people who hated losing money. They hated being lied to even more. But I was not done. I had one more layer to peel back. Category 3, payroll, I said. The screen showed a recurring payment of $3,000 every 2 weeks to a contractor listed as senior cultural consultant. I looked at the audience. Miller Stream has no cultural consultants, I said. This money was deposited directly into the personal checking account of Linda Miller. I pulled up a copy of the check. It was signed by Jason. His mother, I clarified. This money, which was recorded as essential salary, was used to pay the mortgage on a house she had leveraged to fund her online poker habit. I stepped away from the podium and walked to the center of the stage. I stood next to Jason. He looked like a ghost. He looked like a man whose soul had left his body, leaving only a cheap suit behind. He looked at me with wet eyes. Why, he whispered away from the mic. Why are you doing this to me? Because you made me, I whispered back. Then I raised the microphone to my lips for the final blow. I turned to Evelyn Sterling. Mrs. Sterling, you asked for the name of the auditor who signed off on these numbers. I clicked the remote one last time. An image of the financial report cover page appeared on the giant screen. At the bottom was a signature. It read, Sarah Miller, CPA. The room went silent again, waiting for the explanation. That is my name, I said clearly, but that is not my handwriting. I pointed at the screen. I did not sign this report. I did not review these numbers until last night. My signature was forged. My identity was used without my consent to legitimize a Ponzi scheme. I looked at Jason. In the state of Rhode Island and under federal law, this constitutes first-degree fraud-aggravated identity theft and securities fraud. I turned back to the audience. My husband is not a visionary, I said, my voice ringing with finality. He is a criminal, and as of this morning I have filed a formal report with the SEC and the FBI. I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a loud thud that sounded like a gavel coming down. I did not look at Jason again. I walked down the stairs off the stage. The silence in the room lasted for 1 heartbeat, 2 heartbeats. And then chaos erupted. The chaos in the ballroom was a physical force. It started as a low rumble of disbelief and quickly escalated into a roar of outrage. Investors were shouting at their associates. Reporters were scrambling to get closer to the stage, holding their recording devices high, like weapons. The beautiful illusion of Miller Stream had shattered, leaving only the ugly, jagged shards of fraud exposed under the bright lights. I stood at the bottom of the stage stairs, watching the empire crumble. I felt a strange sense of calm. It was the calm of a controlled demolition. I had planted the charges, I had cleared the blast zone, and I had pressed the detonator. Now I was just watching the dust settle. Jason was still standing behind the podium. He looked small. The swagger was gone. The Steve Jobs persona had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified boy in a suit he could not afford. He was gripping the edges of the podium so hard his knuckles were white, as if holding on to the furniture was the only thing keeping him from falling off the face of the earth. He looked at the exit. He looked at the backstage area. He was calculating a run, but he was too late. The double doors at the back of the room swung open with a heavy, authoritative thud. It was a sound that commanded more attention than any microphone. 4 men walked in. They did not look like the investors in their Italian suits. They wore navy blue windbreakers with yellow block lettering on the back. They moved with a synchronized purpose that cut through the confusion of the crowd. FBI. The room parted for them instantly. People scrambled out of the way, knocking over chairs, pressing themselves against the walls to avoid being associated with the target. I saw Evelyn Sterling standing near the front row. She was sipping her water, watching the agents approach with a satisfied nod. She had made the call the moment I showed her the files at breakfast. She did not just want to deny Jason funding, she wanted to clean up the industry. The lead agent walked straight to the stage. He was a tall man with a face like carved stone. He walked up the stairs, his heavy boots thudding on the wood. He stopped 3 feet from Jason. Jason Miller, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Jason backed away, knocking over a water glass. It shattered on the floor, a wet mess around his expensive shoes. "Who are you?" Jason squeaked. I am in the middle of a presentation. You cannot be here. This is a private event." The agent pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "I am Special Agent Davis with the Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant for your arrest." Jason looked at the warrant as if it were written in an alien language. "Arrest. For what?" "I have not done anything. This is a mistake. My lawyers will sue you." "Do you know who I am?" "We know exactly who you are," Mr. Miller, Agent Davis said, calmly pulling a pair of metal handcuffs from his belt. "You are charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." The sight of the handcuffs broke something inside Jason. The reality of the situation finally pierced his delusion. He realized he was not going to talk his way out of this. He was not going to charm the agent. There was no slide deck that could fix this. His eyes darted wildly around the room until they landed on me. I was standing near Evelyn watching him. The fear in his eyes turned to pure, unadulterated hatred. His face twisted into a mask of ugly rage. "You!" he screamed. He lunged toward the edge of the stage, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You did this!" he shrieked, spitting as he yelled. "You witch! You set me up! You planned this whole thing! You gathered these files! You hacked my computer!" Agent Davis grabbed Jason's arms, spinning him around, but Jason fought back, thrashing like a wild animal. "She is the one you want," Jason yelled, struggling against the agent's grip. "Arrest her. She is the accountant. She cooked the books. She is trying to frame me because I asked for a divorce. She is a crazy, vindictive The crowd gasped at the profanity. The cameras were flashing blindingly, capturing every second of his meltdown. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I walked closer to the stage, looking up at him. "I did not frame you, Jason," I said, my voice calm and carrying over his screams. "And I did not set you up. You set yourself up the moment you decided that I was just a tool to be used." Jason was slammed against the podium by the agent. The metal handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The sound was sharp and final. "You are lying!" Jason sobbed, his face pressed against the wood. "You are lying. You gave me permission. We are married. What is mine is yours." "No, Jason," I said, shaking my head. "My credit score is not yours. My professional license is not yours. And my identity is not yours to steal." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. I unfolded it. "Do you remember this?" I asked, holding it up. Jason looked at the paper. "It is a loan application for a BMW X5, I said. "The same car you used to drive me to the bridge. The same car you pushed me out of." I pointed to the applicant section. "You used my social security number to secure this loan," I said. "You knew your credit was ruined from the gambling debts, so you used mine. You forged my signature on a federal loan document." The room went deadly silent. Identity theft against a spouse was a betrayal that resonated with everyone. In the eyes of the law, I continued, that is not a marital dispute. That is a federal felony. It carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 2 years in prison consecutive to any other sentence. Jason stopped struggling. He hung his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I did it for us," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I just wanted us to look successful." I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "No, Jason, you did it for you. You did it to impress people who do not care about you. You did it to buy handbags for a sister who just got arrested for lying to the police. You did it to enable a mother who gambled away her house." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the last 5 years lifting off my shoulders. "I am not ruining you," I said. "I am just protecting my credit score, and I am taking back my name." Agent Davis hauled Jason upright. "Let's go, Mr. Miller," the agent said, pushing him toward the stairs. As they dragged him down the steps, Jason looked at me one last time. His eyes were red, his hair was messy, and his suit was rumpled. He looked like a stranger. "Sarah, please," he begged. "Call my mom. Tell her to call a lawyer. I don't have any money." I looked at him. "I cannot do that, Jason," I said. "Your mother is currently dealing with the fact that her cultural consultant salary has just been cut off, And as for a lawyer, I suggest you ask for a public defender. I hear they are free." The agents pushed him forward. I watched as they marched him down the center aisle, the same aisle he had walked down 10 minutes ago like a conquering hero. Now he was walking it in handcuffs, surrounded by silence and staring eyes. The heavy doors opened and they dragged him out into the hallway where the flashing lights of police cruisers were already reflecting off the walls. The doors swung shut. Jason Miller was gone. I stood there in the silence. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. It was Evelyn Sterling. She did not say a word. She just nodded. A slow, respectful nod. Then she turned to the audience, which was still frozen in shock. "Well," Evelyn said, her voice booming through the room, "I think that concludes the Miller Stream presentation. Does anyone else have a pitch they would like to make? Or should we just break for lunch?" A nervous laughter rippled through the room, breaking the tension. I looked at the empty stage. I looked at the blank screen. It was over. The storm had passed. And for the first time in a long time, the air was clear. The flashing blue and red lights of the police cruisers faded into the distance as they transported my husband to the Federal Detention Center. The Sterling Summit continued inside the ballroom because business never stops for one man's failure. But outside, on the grand steps of the hotel, the air was thick with the scent of ruin. I stood near the valet stand waiting for the Uber that would take me to the station to give my formal statement. I was not alone. The remnants of the Miller family were scattered around the driveway like debris from a shipwreck. Linda Miller was the first to spot me. She was sitting on a stone bench, weeping into a silk handkerchief that she had likely bought with embezzled funds. Her mascara was running down her face in dark rivulets, making her look like a melting wax figure. When she saw me, she did not look angry anymore. She looked desperate. She scrambled up from the bench and ran toward me. Her heels clicked frantically on the pavement. "Sarah," she cried, reaching out with trembling hands. "Sarah, please. You have to stop this. You have to call them back." I took a step back, ensuring there was plenty of space between us. I did not want her touching me. "It is out of my hands, Linda," I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. "The FBI does not take requests. Jason committed federal crimes. He stole from investors. He stole from me, and he stole from the government." Linda grabbed the sleeve of my jacket. "But he is your husband. He did it for the family. He just wanted us to be happy. You cannot let him go to prison. He is not built for prison, Sarah. He is a sensitive boy." I looked at her hand on my sleeve. "Let go of me, Linda," I said calmly. She did not let go. Instead, she gripped tighter, her nails digging into the fabric. "You have to pay his bail," she begged. "We do not have the cash. The accounts are frozen. I tried to use my card at the vending machine inside, and it was declined. They locked everything, Sarah. You have money. You have savings. You need to get him out." I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "You want me to use my money to bail out the man who stole my identity?" I asked. "You want me to bankrupt myself for the man who threatened to release revenge porn of me if I did not help him lie to billionaires?" "Yes," Linda screamed, her desperation turning into hysteria. "Yes, because that is what family does. We forgive. We support." I reached into my purse. I did not pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a folded document that my lawyer had couriered to the hotel concierge just 10 minutes ago. I handed it to her. "This is not a check, Linda," I said. "This is a temporary restraining order." Linda looked at the paper, blinking through her tears. "It states that neither you nor Jason nor any member of your immediate family can come within 500 feet of me or my residence," I explained. "It also bars you from contacting me via phone, email, or third party. If you violate this order, you will join Jason in a cell." Linda dropped her hand as if my jacket had burned her. "You are evil," she whispered. "You are a cold, heartless witch." "No, Linda," I said. "I am just a woman who is finally enforcing her boundaries." At that moment, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb, but it was not there to arrest anyone. It was dropping someone off. The back door opened, and Keisha stepped out. She looked nothing like the polished socialite who had arrived at the party. Her dress was rumpled. Her hair was a mess. She was holding a pink citation slip in her hand. The police had charged her with filing a false report and disturbing the peace, but they had released her on her own recognizance because the jails were full and she was considered a low flight risk. She saw us and marched over, her face twisted in a scowl. "This is your fault," she spat at me. "They gave me a ticket, Sarah. A criminal record. Do you know what this is going to do to my social life?" I ignored her. I was looking past her at a silver Lexus that had just pulled into the driveway. It was Eric, Jason's younger brother and Keisha's husband. He worked in finance at a mid-level bank. He was the quiet one, the one who usually went along with whatever Jason and Linda wanted. But he was also a man who valued his own reputation above all else. Keisha's face lit up when she saw him. "Eric," she yelled, waving her citation. "Baby over here. You have to help me sue Sarah. She ruined everything." Eric got out of the car. He did not look happy. He looked furious. He walked toward us, his stride long and aggressive. Keisha ran to him, expecting a hug. "Eric," she whined, wrapping her arms around his neck. It was horrible. The police were so mean. Eric peeled her arms off him and pushed her away. "Get in the car, Keisha," he said, his voice cold. She looked confused. "What is wrong? Aren't you going to yell at her?" She pointed at me. "I am not yelling at anyone," Eric said. "I just got off the phone with the detective. He told me everything, Keisha." Keisha froze. "What? What did he tell you?" "He told me about the video," Eric said. "He told me you threw yourself on the floor and claimed you were pregnant." Keisha forced a laugh, a nervous, brittle sound. "Oh, that. I was just trying to protect Jason. You know how it is." "No, I do not know how it is," Eric shouted, causing Linda to jump. "Because the detective also told me that you admitted to being drunk, and he told me that you are not pregnant." Keisha looked down at her shoes. "Well, we have been trying." "I might have been." "Stop lying," Eric roared. "We have not been trying, Keisha. I had a vasectomy 3 years ago. Remember, you signed the paperwork." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Linda looked shocked. "You stood there in front of the police and claimed to be carrying my child," Eric said, his voice shaking with disgust. "When you knew it was impossible. You lied to the cops, you lied to the hotel, and you embarrassed me in front of the entire city." He walked around to the driver's side of the car. "I am going to pack your bags," he said. "You can stay at your mother's house. I do not want you in my home when I get back." Keisha screamed, running after him. "Eric, no, you cannot leave me. I have nowhere to go. My credit cards are maxed out." Jason promised to pay them. "Jason is in federal prison," Eric yelled, getting into the car. "And you are on your own." He slammed the door and drove away, leaving Keisha standing in the exhaust fumes, screaming his name. I watched the scene with a detached fascination. It was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. Linda was staring at Keisha, then at the empty spot where the car had been. She looked like she was about to faint. "My family," she whispered. "My beautiful family." I checked my watch. The Uber was 2 minutes away. I had one last truth to deliver. "Linda," I said, drawing her attention back to me. She looked at me, her eyes dull and hopeless. "You mentioned earlier that you tried to use your card and it was declined," I said. Linda nodded, sniffing. "It must be a mistake. The bank made a mistake." "It is not a mistake," I said. "When I audited the company accounts, I found the transfers to your personal account, the salary you were receiving for being a consultant." "So what?" Linda snapped. "Jason gave me that money. He is a good son. That money is considered proceeds of crime," I explained. "Since it was stolen from investors, the FBI has seized it. They have frozen every account that received those funds. That includes your checking account, your savings account, and your retirement fund." Linda's face went white. But that is my money." "No, it is not," I said. "And there is something else." I pulled up an email on my phone and showed it to her. "During my investigation, I found a document regarding your house," I said. "The deed to your home in Scarsdale." "What about my house?" Linda asked, her voice trembling. 6 months ago, you signed a power of attorney document for Jason, I said. You probably did not read it. You just signed whatever he put in front of you because you trusted the golden child. Linda nodded slowly. He said it was for insurance. It was not for insurance, I said. He used your house as collateral for a high-risk business loan to cover the payroll gap, a loan with a predatory lender. I paused, letting the reality sink in. The loan is in default, Linda. The lender called the note this morning when the news of the arrest broke. Linda grabbed her chest. What does that mean? It means the bank owns your house, I said. You have 30 days to vacate. The foreclosure notice was sent to your email an hour ago. Linda let out a scream that sounded like an animal in a trap. She fell to her knees on the concrete. No! She wailed, rocking back and forth. Not my house. My things are in there. My life is in there. Where will I go? I looked down at her. I do not know, Linda, I said. Maybe you can stay with Keisha at her mother's place. I hear they have a very comfortable couch. My Uber pulled up, a sleek black sedan that looked clean and inviting. I opened the door. Linda grabbed at my ankle. Sarah, help me. You have money. You have a big apartment. Let me stay with you. Just for a while, until Jason gets out. Please, I am your mother. I looked down at her hand on my ankle. I looked at the woman who had watched me get kicked out of a car in the rain and did nothing. I looked at the woman who had called me the help. I shook her hand off. You are not my mother, Linda, I said. You are just a line item on a spreadsheet that I just balanced. I got into the car and closed the door. As we drove away, I looked out the back window. Linda was still on her knees, crying into her hands. Keisha was sitting on the curb, staring blankly into space. They were alone. They were broke. And they had no one to blame but themselves. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. Rough day, he asked. I looked at the passing scenery. The sun was shining. The ocean was blue. No, I said, smiling. It is actually a beautiful day. I just finished a very big project. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. The silence in the car was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of freedom. 30 days. That is exactly how long it takes to dismantle a life built on lies and construct a new one built on truth. I sat in a leather swivel chair that cost more than my old wedding dress. The smell of fresh paint and expensive espresso filled the air. Across the desk from me, Evelyn Sterling was signing the final page of a very thick document. She capped her fountain pen with a satisfying click and slid the papers toward me. Congratulations, Sarah, Evelyn said, leaning back with a smile that was rare and genuine. The funds have been wired. The lease is in your name, and the client list is already longer than we anticipated. I looked down at the document. At the top, in bold embossed letters, was the name of my new firm, Vanguard Financial Forensics. I ran my finger over the logo. A month ago, I was a ghost. I was the invisible wife, fixing spreadsheets in the dark, while my husband played the visionary in the spotlight. Today, I was the CEO of the most aggressive forensic accounting firm in New England, backed by the Sterling Capital. I did not work for Evelyn. That was the first thing I established when she offered me a job after the summit. I told her I was done working for people who thought they owned me. I told her I wanted a partner, not a boss. She respected that. In fact, she wrote a check for $2 million in seed money the next morning. Thank you, Evelyn, I said, signing my name on the bottom line. It feels surreal. It is not surreal, Evelyn said, standing up and walking to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the harbor. It is simply a market correction. You were undervalued for years. Now you are trading at your true price. She turned to look at me. By the way, I heard from my lawyers regarding the Miller case. I paused the pen hovering over the paper. The name still caused a phantom ache in my chest, not of love, but of regret for the time I wasted. What is the update? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Evelyn adjusted her blazer. The grand jury indicted Jason on all counts: wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. His public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor is not interested. They want to make an example of him. He is looking at 8 to 10 years in federal prison. I nodded slowly. 8 years. He would be 40 years old when he got out. He would have nothing. No career, no reputation, no family money to fall back on. "And Linda?" I asked. "Evicted yesterday," Evelyn said. "The bank took possession of the house. I heard she is staying in a motel on Route 95, trying to sell her jewelry to pay for the room. But since most of her jewelry was fake, just like her life, she is not having much luck." I felt a strange sense of pity, but it was distant, like watching a tragedy on the news. I had offered them chances. I had offered them loyalty. They chose to burn the bridge. I stood up and shook Evelyn's hand. "Thank you for the update," I said. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have a meeting with the district attorney. He wants to hire our firm to consult on a statewide embezzlement case." Evelyn laughed. "Go get them, Tiger." I walked out of the office and took the private elevator down to the garage. My footsteps echoed on the concrete. I walked past the sensible sedans and the practical SUVs until I reached my spot. Sitting there gleaming under the fluorescent lights was a vintage Mercedes SL convertible. It was cherry red. It was impractical. It was loud. It was everything Jason would have hated because it drew attention to the woman driving it, not the man in the passenger seat. I bought it with my own money, my clean money. I threw my bag into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, a deep throat growl that vibrated through my bones. I put the top down. I drove out of the garage and merged onto the highway. The sun was shining so bright it hurt my eyes. The sky was a piercing, limitless blue. I turned up the radio. I did not listen to sad breakup songs. I listened to classic rock, loud and defiant. I drove toward the coast. I needed to do this. I needed to close the loop. 10 minutes later, I saw it rising in the distance. The Claiborne Pell Bridge. The last time I was here, the sky was gray. The rain was slashing sideways, and I was standing on the side of the road shivering and broken, watching my husband's taillights disappear. Today the bridge was bathed in sunlight. The ocean below was sparkling like crushed diamonds. I pressed the accelerator. The car surged forward, eating up the asphalt. The wind whipped my hair around my face. I felt wild. I felt free. I drove past the exact spot where Jason had pushed me out. I slowed down just for a second. I looked at the emergency breakdown lane. It looked so small. It looked insignificant. I remembered the girl who stood there. The girl who thought her life was over because a man told her she was worthless. I wanted to reach back in time and hug her. I wanted to tell her that the rain would stop. I wanted to tell her that the best thing Jason Miller ever did was drive away. I sped up, leaving the spot behind. I crossed the apex of the bridge, feeling like I was flying over the ocean. Suddenly, the Bluetooth system in the car interrupted the music. A ringing sound filled the cabin. I looked at the dashboard screen. Incoming call, Rhode Island Correctional Facility. My heart did not race. My palms did not sweat. It was him. He was using his one phone call for the day. He was calling me. I could imagine him in his orange jumpsuit sitting in a common room filled with other men who had made bad choices. I could imagine what he wanted to say. Maybe he wanted to beg. "Sarah, please, I can change." Maybe he wanted to threaten, "You will pay for this." Maybe he wanted to gaslight. "I love you, baby. This is all a mistake." It did not matter. His voice did not matter. His wants did not matter. He was a bad investment that I had written off. I looked at the road ahead. It was wide open. I reached out my hand. I did not press answer. I pressed the red button on the touchscreen. Decline. Then I pressed a second button. Block contact. The ringing stopped. The music came back on. The guitar solo of a song about freedom filled the air. I smiled. A real smile. One that reached my eyes and warmed my face. I looked at my hand on the steering wheel. There was no wedding ring on my finger. The tan line where the gold band used to be was already fading. For years, I thought that ring was my shield. I thought being Mrs. Jason Miller was my identity. I thought that if I kept the secrets and balanced the books and played the role of the good wife, I would be safe. I was wrong. Safety is not found in a man. Security is not found in a marriage certificate, and worth is certainly not found in the approval of a family who only loves you when you are useful. I shifted gears, and the car accelerated, pushing me back into the seat. The value of a woman is not in the diamond on her hand. It is in the strength of her spine. It is in her ability to stand on her own 2 feet when the world tries to knock her down. And most importantly, it is in the power of a clean balance sheet and the courage to walk away from a bad deal. I drove off the bridge and into the city. My name is Sarah. I am 29 years old. I am a CEO. I am free, and my life is just beginning. Sarah's journey reveals a harsh truth about loyalty that many of us are afraid to face. We often tolerate disrespect because we call it family. We endure financial abuse because we call it marriage. We stay in toxic situations because we believe that our love and our sacrifice will eventually be enough to change the people who hurt us. But as Sarah discovered, you cannot love someone into respecting you, and you cannot budget away a betrayal. The most powerful weapon Sarah possessed was not her forensic software or her connection to a billionaire. It was her refusal to participate in the lie any longer. For years, she was the safety net for a husband who pushed her off a bridge the moment she became inconvenient. She was the fixer for a family that viewed her as broken. Her liberation only began when she stopped trying to prove her worth to people who could not afford her value. This story serves as a reminder that financial literacy is a form of self-defense. Knowing where your money goes and understanding your legal rights is not unromantic. It is essential. Blind trust is not love. It is a liability. Sarah teaches us that we must periodically audit the people in our lives, just as we audit our bank accounts. We must look at the emotional transactions. Are these people investing in our growth, or are they draining our spirit? If the relationship is nothing but a deficit, if the people around you are liabilities disguised as assets, then you have every right to cut your losses. Walking away is not a failure. It is the most profitable decision you will ever make. If you enjoyed Sarah's story and her cold, calculated revenge, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever had to audit the people in your life and cut off a toxic family member or partner? Tell us your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Remember, you are the CEO of your own life. Do not let anyone cook the books. See you in the next video.